Welcome to Persecution Report. We'll wait a minute for our audience to join us. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from different parts of the world. Bangladesh has long been hailed for its vibrant democracy. Yet, under the Mohammed Yunus-led government, journalists face unprecedented risk. Over the past year, attacks, arrests, and restrictive laws have threatened free expression across the country. Rights groups condemned Mohammed Yunus's action. On November 13, groups such as Reporters Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, PEN International wrote a joint letter to Mohammed Yunus for protection of the journalists. As you can see, this is the letter from RSF, where they condemns the outrageous charges of crimes against humanity brought against at least 25 journalists. On World Press Freedom Day, the top newspaper of Bangladesh, the Daily Star, reported 266 journalists face criminal cases so far. Those cases are fabricated criminal charges, including murders and crime against humanity. Especially pro-71 journalists are the victim. As of November 2024, 182 journalists are facing criminal charges. 206 journalists face acts of violence, criminal intimidation against them. Denial of accreditation to journalists, 167 cases. Inquiry by Regulatory Commission, 85 cases. Total number of attacks on journalists was 640. This number has increased drastically. It's not just journalists, the free expression as well. Professor Curzon and journalist Mannan Panna was intimidated by a mob. They were beaten and later taken custody this year, just a couple of months ago. A boy, teenage, was taken into custody for writing a post against Mohammed Yunus and sharing a video on Facebook. Then YouTuber Sabir, he was arrested without any charge for 2 months, was in custody. Later, the charge was brought up against him for anti-government social media post. He was remanded for 3 days. A remand of such caliber was mostly in Bangladesh for people who does grave violence. So what is the current situation for journalists and media workers in Bangladesh today? And how has it evolved over the past year under Yunus's government? We'll examine this with our panelists. Joining me today, Syed Badrul Ahsan, an editor, senior journalist, and an author. Barrister Tapas Kanti Baul, a human rights activist. And Dr. Raihan Rashid, a legal professional and trustee of the ICSF Forum. My first question today to Syed Badrul Ahsan and Dr. Raihan Rashid, jointly to you guys, how it is evolved here today.
Thank you, and thank you for those statistics, although many of us have known of everything that has been going on in Bangladesh in the last 14 months since this regime illegally came to power or usurped power. Now, the situation in Bangladesh today, insofar as the press is concerned, that's understandable. But before that, my question is: should we be surprised at what has been happening in the press arena, in the media arena, when it is an entire country that has been taken hostage by unconstitutional forces, by anti-state forces, when it is Bangladesh's history that is under assault, its heritage that is under assault. There's nothing to be surprised at when you have all these um, symbols of the War of Liberation of 1971 coming under assault and then being violated and also reduced to smithereens. Think of the home come museum of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, when people, when influential people, influential in the sense I use it within inverted commas, the notoriously influential people, when they send bulldozers to Road 32 to demolish Bangabandhu's home come museum, a symbol of Bangladesh's history. Uh, I am not quite surprised. We in Bangladesh or outside Bangladesh, we are not surprised at what is happening to press freedom in the country. Well, there is the press, there is an absence of freedom. There's no freedom. We unfortunately we don't have a kind of situation which persisted even which was there even in the 1960s when the regime of Pakistan's Field Marshal Muhammad Ayub Khan, it was there. But then there were people like Zahur Hussain Chaudhry and Manik Mia who could raise their voices against the repressive activities of the government. Now we are in a situation where it is not just the people, not just democracy which is under assault, it is the entire People's Republic of Bangladesh which is under assault. So I would like to say at this point, before we go to the next round, I would like simply to say that our journalists in Bangladesh, they live in a state of fear. In fact, one of our journalists, a senior journalist, was telling me the other day of the hooliganism that she has been subjected to. She writes or she talks to foreign news agencies, and they send her remuneration to her bank account in Dhaka. But then she later found out that she has been accused of indulging in money laundering. Money laundering is when money goes out. You send money out illegally. And she told me, I have I have money coming in, my remuneration, my honoraria coming in for my conversations, for my discussion, and they have lodged this case against me. And then, of course, there's another journalist who tells me that there was a comprehensive uh, examination of his bank accounts. Nothing illegal was found in his bank accounts. So the authorities, the present illegal authorities, having not found anything illegal about his bank accounts, they turned to the bank account of his wife. So you see, this persecution that has been going on, this these activities that have been going on in Bangladesh against the media, and this despite the false comments made by Mohammed Yunus. Whenever he comes abroad, whenever he travels abroad, he tries to impress Western audiences with the idea, with the notion.
We'll go to Mohammed Yunus later. Sir Badrul Ahsan, I have an additional question for you.
Okay,
You have been known for a critic of the Awami League government during their tenure, 15 years tenure. Many instances you have been criticizing their actions.
yeah,
As we know, that press freedom in Bangladesh was never smooth. It was always contested.
yes,
During the tenure of the previous government, what we have seen and what was reported was that self-censorship. What type of problems faced by senior journalists like you during our Awami government, and why it is so severe right now? What is the difference?
yes. Thank you for raising this point. Yes, press freedom in Bangladesh, the press has never been as free as we would have wanted it to be. If we go back to our history, 54-year history, uh, but specifically the last government, the Awami League government, yes, we know there was a digital security act. uh, all these restrictions were there, and self-censorship was exercised. And it is regrettable that these things had to take place under a government which which believed that it was democratic, which a lot of people believed that it was sanctioned. Its ascendance to power was sanctioned by popular support through elections. But then those elections are a different matter altogether. What I would like to say now, yes, in the past, see, I did, yes, I did write about these anomalies or these transgressions by the previous government, and I also pointed out, as you must have noticed, as others have also pointed out, that in the past, criticism of the government was not actually welcome. I wouldn't say it was not tolerated. I wouldn't say that it was there were repressive measures. But then there have been instances of journalists being carted off to jail in the past also. So that legacy, or the legacy, or any legacy coming from behind that, from earlier, from earlier than 2009, that legacy has taken us to a point where we now have a regime which does not care at all about press freedom. So the point here is, see, in order to take Bangladesh back to an ideal state, we need to retrace all the mistakes that have been made, not just by the Yunus regime, but by the Awami League government, by the BNP government, and by the military regimes that took place, that was the earlier. And also, if I may, go back to 1975, when curbs were placed on press freedom, with just four newspapers being allowed to function. So the legacy, the history, has not been comfortable that we have faced in our time, in my time at least.
But during the previous government, you are sure that, okay, there might be intimidation, but you knew that no one was going to kill you for journalism.
Exactly, exactly. So the
But
difference between the Awami League government and this government is, in the previous government, anybody who was arrested, not just journalists, anybody who was arrested could be assured of being taken to court, that bail applications will be there. He or she might or might not be given bail, but the option was there. The legal pathway was there. Now, what has happened is, every journalist who is taken into custody, or any citizen, any personality, any individual who is taken into custody, he or she is taken to prison, and a false case of murder is clamped on him or her. So that is the difference. But we have these options in the earlier regime, in the Awami League, in the period of the Awami League government. Now that option is not there. You will see, of course, votaries of this government, people who are in this regime, they will always use the term fascist to describe the Awami League regime. But what they have been doing in the last 14 months, those their activities fall under the purview of fascism as we have known it in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and now in Bangladesh. So there's the difference.
Dr. Raihan Rashid, being a human rights activist and just an political activist as well, you have been observing the situation in Bangladesh, especially the situation the journalists are facing. Can we have your perspective? Like, what actually is the situation? Also, I would like you to emphasize on the matter, the fabricated murder charges, the criminal charges, and the charges of crimes against humanity against the journalists.
Uh, Thank you, Tanoy, for having me. Uh, a lot of things that actually have already been said by Mr. Saud Badrul Ahsan. Look, uh, you don't need censorship, although censorship is there at the moment. Direct, indirect, even self censorship, which has already been mentioned by my previous commentator. You don't need censorship when fear does the job. And the profession of journalism or press freedom, it is about delivering messages to the people, informing the people. But when you attack the messenger, you basically blind the message. Let me be very honest here. Uh, uh, Badrul Bhai and Tonoy, you both mentioned about the state of freedom in Bangladesh previously. It is true that indeed the state of freedom in Bangladesh was never exemplary. It was not glorious to begin with. But to be honest, I always thought that I had seen the worst of it, but I was wrong. Unfortunately, under the current regime, the Yunus regime in the current government, it has unfortunately reached a new low. So that is where we are now. To speak of Bangladesh, the country has become almost a surveillance state. Uh, I would say that it is more so than any time before in the history of this country. Uh, Thank you for sharing a lot of statistics with the audience, and I was also going through those. But the end of the day, these are not just statistics about an individual journalist or individual press
We
house.
can actually put that statistic one more time for our audience. Jen, can you put
Yeah, that would be
the
great
statistic?
actually. But I'm trying to say that behind every statistics, these are not just statistics. They are actually behind every statistics there is a person, there are people, there are families. So these statistics go far beyond what we see in just numbers. Uh, Immediately after this current government took over power last year, what we have seen TV stations, newspaper offices were burned down. Uh, and the murder charges, you have already talked about it, like the hundreds and hundreds of journalists, they're now facing ridiculous charges, including of crimes against humanity, murder. That's that's just absurd. And
What's your friends in Bangladesh who are in journalism, what they're saying about it, and how they're feeling? I mean, like when they goes to workplace, to
oh,
their reporting, what feeling do they have?
well, uh, what feeling they have, and you would say what they're saying. My question is, can they say anything at the moment? You're saying widespread arrests without bail, indefinite detentions. Uh, you are saying what we are seeing. We're seeing summary dismissals from jobs, and it is just routine. And those journalists who are still employed, they live under constant threat and fear of losing their jobs. So that is actually what is going on. And you probably are aware of that security personnel or political loyalists of the current government, they've effectively set up some kind of informal monitoring cells or mechanisms inside every media house. And what they're doing, they're vetting what can and cannot be published.
That's
So when you there is actually a simple test, to determine whether what is the state of journalism or media in a country. The test is very simple. It is like, whenever you notice that there is a huge gap between what the public already knows and what the press dares to report, you know something is terribly wrong, because we can see that there is a huge gap. It is
So
glaring.
what we see here, Raihan Rashid, is that aside from political pressure, the government, Yunus government, is also using a legal framework to intimidate the journalist, to muzzle him.
Uh,
Barrister,
in in in, in are you asking me, or
no, no, it's all
Mr.
right.
Tapas?
You can give us an idea about it, okay, and I
I'd say
believe
very
it will
briefly, before Taposh takes over. Look, this is not just about legal machinery. The state is currently using both legal and extra legal tools. If I'm at liberty to say that, these tools are used to silence dissent. Courts, police, mobs, online vigilante groups, they operate apparently in sync. Uh, Dissent criminalized, mob violence, social media witch hunts, they're very common. There are calls for boycott online. Uh, and these are some of the few tactics of intimidation. So that is going on. Probably Tapo should elaborate on that more.
And
Thank
recently, we have also seen three of the journalists were actually killed. Three of the journalists were killed. As I was speaking with Syed Badrul Ahsan, the senior journalist from Bangladesh and an editor, that in Bangladesh we have seen journalists are going to jail and facing the legal procedure. But we have never seen journalists are killed for doing their job. It was very rare. Like last we know, it was probably in 2013. Journalist Shagar and Rooney. We also do not know that whether that case was because of journalism or something else. The case is so complicated, so many governments. Okay, it is sad that our law enforcement agencies didn't couldn't find out the reason. One of the mysteries of Bangladesh, Shagaruni killing the journalist couple. But what we are seeing today, that okay, just in recent time, in the past 2 months, three journalists were killed in most heinous way, despicable way possible. To Barrister Baul, could you please give us an idea the legal framework the government using to intimidate the journalists?
First of all, I have to say that Bangladesh government right now is using penal code uh, to intimidate journalists because they are filing false cases. The trend is that the government is weaponizing everything which they have in their possession. For example, like since 5th of August, there are thousands of cases against national and local journalists who are put into false murder cases. So the main purpose of putting them into those false murder cases, false vandalism cases, or imposing grievous hurt cases, the main purpose is to silence them so that they don't participate into any journalistic activities, whether they are in online or offline. And as a result of that, we have seen that a total silence was imposed all over Bangladesh until recently, when people were afraid to say things. Look, I will just refer to one news that is just posted today by Bangladesh সংবাদ Samostha. Uh, the chairman of Bangladesh সংবাদ Samostha, he puts certain conditions over journalism, over journalistic approaches, which is journalists must prioritize accuracy, quality over sensationalism. So this is the same thing that is being practiced by the press secretary of the present government. The press secretary, he himself is a spin doctor, and he is always the time whenever there is certain something coming up. Like one example, look into the reporting in about the envoys who actually who was traveling with Dr. Yunus during this UN General Assembly. So he just imposed readily. He just said that 64, not a person more, went with Dr. Yunus. And what happened just after that? Prothom Alo was forced to remove that news. The news is nowhere you will find. So this is another
Yeah,
example.
actually, today, Bangladeshi news sphere is full of 404 not found Google searches. There's many news they publish, and after that, someone from the government will call the editor that you'll have to remove
Right.
this news. 404 not found everywhere in Bangladeshi news sphere.
I mean, not only that, just Dr. Raihan Rashid was saying that extrajudicial and extra legal measures were being used, which is using mob attack. Like the moment you think that you need to shut down or force certain journalists to quit their jobs, you just attack their working place, you just attack their homes. Or what is more, that you know that certain journalists are being chopped in front of their home or in front of their working place. And do you think that there is any progress in the investigation of those incidents? No, there is no progress. So for that reason, that you if you browse uh, you know uh, international organizations like Committee to Protect Journalists or International Journalists Network, or name anything, you will find that everywhere they are saying that the main weapon is the culture of impunity that is being used by Dr. Yunus at this moment. So apart from that, another law that was
Jinan,
used in the
just a
past.
moment, please.
Yes.
Ambassador Ball, just a minute. Jen, can you please put that slide Professor Karzon and journalist Panna. Yeah, this is a prime example of that, isn't it? That
Right.
culture of impunity. In the press club, in the press club, they had a conference and they attended the conference. Uh, Professor Karzon, who is a distinguished professor of the country of law, we had journalist Panna, who is a senior journalist in the country. They went for a conference. A mob attacked them, as you can see. After the mob attack, instead of taking the mob to custody, Professor Curzon and journalist Panna, they were arrested. It happened nearly 2 months ago, and still they are in jail today.
Right. I mean, not only that, as I said before, that the law which is being used mostly is the penal code. As I said, look at Sharia Kabir, look into the six journalists, including journalist Rupa, that everyone is behind the bar by using penal code, because the Digital Security Act, which was installed before, which was also not a good act, that is scrapped. So there is no Digital Security Act. Instead, they are using penal code. Then another thing they are using extremely well is that the blasphemy laws under the penal code that we have. So if you are
Section 295.
right, if you are not a journalist per
195.
se, but if you are a social journalist, social media journalist, then also, and if you are a Hindu person, then you will be targeted for making any reference towards Muslim leaders, you know. So and then there will be a blasphemous law against you, mob will attack, you might be killed, your house might be destroyed, and there will be no justice for that.
I have a question for Syed Badrul Ahsan here. That, as we all understand, Mohammed Yunus leads an interim government, and the role of an interim government is to hold an election and hand the power over to an elected government. And in the meantime, they could have some reforms if it is necessary. We we may welcome some reforms. As we know, in Bangladesh, we need some reforms, which is often for a political government a difficult task given our political landscape. It is very complex, like any other countries. What interest Yunus has here to muzzle all these journalists, to like censor the press? What interest he has? It doesn't make sense to me for interim government head.
Well, the interest is simple. Uh, these people who are in power, who are holding on to power, it's their intention to perpetuate themselves in power as long as they can. If you go through their statements on the elections that they've always been talking about, they have done nothing about the elections. They keep telling us that there will be elections in February, but no steps have been taken towards ensuring that a free, fair, credible, and inclusive election will take place in February, or that there's no guarantee. I mean, we have not seen any election schedule being given by the current election commission. So that is one point. And secondly, see, these people who are in power, look at the way they have come to power. In earlier times, we have had a number of caretaker regimes which came to office through the agreement of the various political parties and through constitutional provisions. But these people who came to power, who didn't come to power, I would say, who were placed in power in August last year, they were put there on the basis of unconstitutional means. Now they will tell you, of course, that the Article 106 was there. Article 106 is not comprehensive enough to allow you to seize the state and do anything and everything that you want. And then you look at their activities. They have formed 11 reform commissions dealing with different subjects. That is not within their remit. They're an interim government. An interim government's job, as we can see in our times, through the interim government which operates in Nepal today, its job is to ensure that a fresh election takes place, that a new elected government takes office. But here in Bangladesh, 14 months have gone by, and these people are simply not interested in an election. Although they might tell us ad infinitum about elections in February. So what they have been doing is actually do everything that is not permitted for them to do. They have they have imported an advisor from abroad, so somebody, an individual from abroad, to rewrite the constitution. Now, and look at the audacity of it. The constitution that we have, 1972 constitution that we have, was framed by the Constituent Assembly in 1972. And here, an unelected government, which has no authority to rule the country in that legal sense of the meaning, that has invited an individual and some other individuals to rewrite the constitution. And then also the other commissions. There's a media. They formed a media commission. So briefly said, pointing out all these things is the fact that these people, they have no legitimacy, and the sooner they arrange elections, the better. But then again, the question arises at this point in time: say, are we convinced that this regime can hold elections? Because it has already imposed restrictions on the largest political party in the country, the former ruling party, the Awami League. Now, the Awami League has anywhere between 35 to 40% of popular support, if not more. You can't. It's not a question of whether or not you support the Awami League or you are against the Awami League. The point is, a large political party. By a large political party, we mean political parties like the Awami League and the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. If you don't have any one of these parties, in this instance the Awami League, taking part in the political process, you don't have any future. Democracy doesn't have any future.
I want to add one thing. So Badrul Ahsan, he just said that the government is not doing anything for holding a free and fair election. But ironically, I see that they are doing everything so that pro-Islamist extremist groups can participate in this election and win this election. Since we are talking about journalists, what happened today in Chittagong? When one journalist, you know that couple of days ago in a concert in Chittagong, when the audience was shouting and chanting about Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu, then people attacked over there and fired.
For our audience to know, for our overseas audience, Joy Bangla and Joy Bangabandhu is Bangladesh's Pro 71 chanting, and Joy Bangla and Joy Bangabandhu, especially Joy Bangabandhu, is also a chanting used by Bangladesh Awami League and its supporters.
I would say that Joy Bangabandhu is synonymous to Joy Bangla, because without Bangabandhu we wouldn't have had our independence. So
Joy Bangla used to be our national slogan.
Exactly.
Yes. Joy Bangla is our national slogan. So going back to that when a Shamukal a Jamuna television journalist went to the local police station today to collect some news about what happened, how the police has progressed the investigation into this incident, they were actually insulted and assaulted by the officer in charge of that Khulsi Thana police station. Now, going back to other incidents, is that you see, when all of us remember the moment when the house of Dhanmondi Botrish was demolished, right? At that moment, another journalist was assaulted by the mob. Why? Because he just used the word Bangabandhu, asking a question. So with these two examples, I want to say that this particular government is actually targeting those people who are pro-liberation, who are pro-Awami League, and who are progressive. They don't want anyone who believe in the high ideals of 1971, who believes in Awami League, and who believes in having a liberal society. So that is what they are doing, and they are targeting those people. They are just shutting down those voices.
What we are getting here, that Yunus is intimidating and torturing the journalist because he wants his agenda to be hidden. And if journalists are allowed to write, he couldn't hide them because Bangladesh, being a democracy, has a very vibrant media landscape. We have thousands of journalists.
Right now, I will say one more sentence and then I'll stop. Is that right now in Bangladesh, there is a tag of war between the present government, Jamaat Islami, and Bangladesh army, right? So in this three-side tag of war, journalists are not enjoying any sort of freedom because they don't know which news to publish, when to publish, and when not to publish. Because they can publish something which may go in favor of army or may not go in favor of army, and they are actually dissatisfying some quarters in any way. So in fear of their life, they do not know what to publish and where to publish it right now. So
Exactly.
So,
May I come in with a point here? Say about journalists. You see, we've been talking about the rights of journalists, and the intimidation, the persecution they are going through. You may have also noticed, obviously, that in the past, I mean, before August last year, there were good columns which were published in all newspapers, English language and Bengali language newspapers. All those columnists, those experts who used to write their opinions columns every week, those columnists or those writers have fallen silent, or they have been intimidated into silence because their articles are not accepted by newspapers, whose whose management, the management lives in a state of fear in all newspapers, and they are not willing to publish any article that will have the mob rushing at them. As you remember, the mobs that were there a few months ago before Prothomalo and before Daily Star. So that is also a problem. And on television talk shows these days in Bangladesh, the reputed people, the intellectuals who used to be brought or invited to those talk shows, they are not there. And what you have on those television talk shows in Bangladesh these days are mundane discussions. And again, much of that discussion is focused against the Awami League. See, and nobody is there. Fine, you can talk against the Awami League, of course, but then nobody is there to assess what is happening in real terms in present day Bangladesh. But then again, I'll end here. One point, the question of intimidation comes in here. But my question is, although we are all pessimistic about the situation now, the question is, have the people of Bangladesh ever been intimidated in the past? Yes, they have been intimidated in the past, going back to Pakistani times, going back to 1971, post 1975. But then we have always turned the corner. We have always turned back, and I think a time will come, because if you look at the Yunus regime, it has been alienating its own supporters, say, who were there with it in the beginning. Many of those supporters have moved away, and even among these people who are in the NCP, they have been airing their grievances against the regime, and they've been talking, they've been raising their suspicions about moves by some of the advisors in the government for a safe exit out of the country. So they're also being careful. So you see, they are creating the template, the tectonic plates have been shifting in Bangladesh, and I think we don't know when change will come, but that a movement for change has begun. That is quite evident. Thank you.
If I may add to Sayyid Badrul Ahsan,
I
I've
actually
talked
have
to.
a,
Okay.
I actually have a very different question for you, Dr. Raihan Rashid. Uh, Considering what we have heard from Sayyid Badrul Ahsan and Tapas Kanti Baul, it seems like the intimidation and these tactics, like awful tactics by Mohammed Yunus, is actually working. He was able to silence the media.
You are very right.
Yeah.
I've talked to many journalists, and they have described working their work as nowadays, like they describe it as walking on glass. So walking on glass, can you imagine that? To them, like every story they write, every report they write, it feels like a risk. Like every a headline can lead to a knock at the door or a social media witch hunt leading to arrest and detention. Uh, so I would say that fear is the word here. And what is the consequence of all this? What is the result? The result is we have seen that the even the space that used to exist for investigative reporting, investigative journalism, that has shrinked, almost disappeared. And and you know, what is the purpose of all this? What is the purpose of journalism? Like, it is so that people know, or like people can be informed. As a result of all this, I'd say that people's right to know has been severely affected. And that is, and this is how a country dies, actually.
Exactly.
And we are I think we are witnessing that. So
There
that
is
is really good.
something even more despicable to about Yunus's regime, that we have seen in Bangladesh people being targeted by many criminal gangs, terrorists in Bangladesh. Even we have seen that terrorist targeting bloggers in Bangladesh.
We have seen
We
that
have
before, yes.
yeah, but we have never seen this. Even those Al Qaeda terrorists, they never went after the family of a targeted person. But under Yunus, they goes after the family. If they do not find someone, if someone is stubborn, if someone is freedom loving, they'll go after the family members.
Look, I will tell you
You
that
cannot
there are
go more low.
uh, uh, Mr. Alam, I will say that there are three kind of tactics so far being identified. There is one called soft tactics, right? Tactics is that you decline all sorts of cards of getting into the government offices. That's like soft tactics, and just rebuking that. And because of that rebuking, you will be removed from important positions from your office, or you will just lose your job. That is the soft technique. And then the second mid court technique is that they will file a case against you, and or there will be mob attacking you and threatening you. And also in the mid-core section, you will find that there are certain journalists who were actually speaking against BNP and Jamaat policies, but now they are talking in favor of them. How? They are not, it is not only, fear factor here. There is also money factor, and there are anti Awami League journalists who actually are in fear that if Awami League comes back into power again, then what will happen to them? So in fear of that, they are also working. So that I would say mid level. But what is the hardcore tactic? Hardcore tactic is that, for example, if your bank account is being frozen, if your passport is being taken, if you are thrown into jail and you are mistreated. So these are the kind of tactics that are being used by the Yunus government. All sorts of tactics they are using. And
So there's another tactic which is taking over of a media house. We have seen thugs going with criminals, and they are just with force. They're taking the media house.
or they are just
Just
changing the ownership, you know
yeah, the changing ownership is one thing that can be accepted because it's a business end of the day. But what we have seen in Janakanto just 3 months ago, that a National Citizens Party, which is Mohammed Yunus's party, him and his thugs went to that office, and they just forcefully took the office, took the business with force. And this is happening all over media. We have seen the NCP leaders openly threatening the media house. They are sending mobs to media house. We have seen mobs in front of nation's top media, Prothom Alo and Daily Star. And in this situation, can they really report? Still, we are getting news. can they really report? So Badrul Ahsan.
So you see, the big question here is, we may feel, we may ask ourselves, why don't these newspapers print articles or print reports that reflect journalistic freedom? But then we also need to appreciate the conditions that they are in. Now, for those of us who are abroad, say we can talk about media freedom all we want, but the ground reality at home, that also has to be taken into account. Now, Prothomalo, Jonokonto, Daily Star, and all of the newspapers which would like to carry to project the truth, they are in a situation. Their hands and feet are bound. They cannot move forward because of this intimidation, mob violence. Now, this is something in earlier times. Let's say pre 1971 times and post 1971 times, post 1975 times, we have seen curbs on the media during General Ershad's time. I remember people like myself, we used to work for newspapers. In the middle of the night, something called advise, which was not advice, it was actually warning, but the word used was advice. The advice came to the editor that this particular news or that particular report should not go. Now, and we agreed. We didn't go because if we did carry that report, the powers of the authority, the powers of the regime would come down on us. So those restrictions were there. But then one has to admit that beginning with Ayub Khan and all the way to Ziaur Rahman and General Ershad, and later on the civilian government that we have had in the country, there were restrictions, there were problems, but then there was no unleashing of mobs. So what we have now is a situation where mobs are there. A mob is a terrible thing to happen in the country. A mob does not respect civility. A mob does not respect the constitution or democracy. A mob is there because it has its patrons behind it, patrons encouraging it, supporters encouraging it. So that is also a factor. And what we need to do is people who are abroad and also within the country, and also organizations like Human Rights Watch, Reporters Without Frontiers, we need to come together and build up a situation where press freedom, the right of the press, the right of the media in Bangladesh is emphasized, so that the government cannot get away with it.
On that note, Saad Badrul Ahsan, that when we are speaking about the international organizations that defending press freedom across the globe, here we are not just talking about press freedom. We agree that press freedom was contested in Bangladesh even before. What we are speaking about today is about saving the life of the workers who work in the press industry,
Exactly.
the journalists.
True.
That they are engaged in fabricated murder charges.
Yes, and many of these,
not only that,
many journalists I know, many of these journalists I know,
I would like to add one point here.
they're hiding.
I was going through news.
Sorry.
It is not only criminal charges. One journalist went to the police station in Chittagong, and the police commissioner allegedly beat him up. I was just going through the news. It is the latest news. A journalist named the police commissioner named Amirul Islam. He physically assaulted the journalist at the police station in Chittagong.
See, so this is all sheer lawlessness, absolute absence of the rule of law in the country.
So how can the international rights group can help Dr. Raihan Rashid?
Look, this is not just about press freedom. It is about whether truth still has a voice, because truth matters. So that's the bottom line. We should always remember that. Regarding your question, my answer would be, it is advocacy, advocacy, and advocacy, because the journalists nowadays, they can't speak freely for themselves. So others must speak on their behalf. So what we can do, we have to, for example, we can mobilize international civil society. We can make the stories from Bangladesh known. We can apply, I'd say, sustained pressure, like diplomatic, legal pressure, at least from the diaspora. We have a role to play, as Sir Badrul Ahsan mentioned, because at least people living abroad, they can speak out. Uh, Particularly, I would like to mention that the important thing is we have to support the women journalists, women reporters, because the patterns of abuse, the kind of abuse they're facing, that is actually something different than others.
It includes
They're
rape.
they're facing misogynistic slurs. They're uh, all sorts of sexual harassment things. So those are happening at the moment. Uh, I would say that at the end of the day, any change, any real change under any regime is not easy. It is going to be difficult, but I would say that it's not impossible. It can be done. Uh,
Uh,
if you
Barrister
look at
Tapas Kanti Baul,
if you look at the history, Taposh, Tonoy, that we have seen that many authoritarian structures cracked under consistent pressure from the public. So I'd say that each small act of courage matters, and now more so
no,
than
but
ever.
what we are seeing here is that uh, we need something more than advocacy for sure, because here journalists are bleeding literally. It's not just they're going to prison. If they're prison, okay, if advocacy, that's good.
No,
Advocacy,
it is
advocacy,
just advocacy
advocacy.
is
But
just the starting point, Tonoy.
when they're
Advocacy is just the
beaten
starting
and
point.
bleeding, they're killed, because
No,
one life is
yeah, we have
one
to,
journalist life
Tonoy,
is
we
far
have
too
to
many.
actually set up legal aid mechanisms. So we have to set up safe channels for journalists who are facing persecutions. Those are actually concrete steps, and we should actually focus on that as well.
And what
May I
role that? Yes,
may I
please.
add one more thing, Mr. Alam, that uh, together with what Dr. Raihan Rashid said about advocacy and legal mechanism, with what the Chief Justice of India said today, that law should be working for the weak and marginalized. Right now in Bangladesh, if you are a journalist of pro-liberation, high ideals, if you are a journalist believing in the politics of Awami League, if you are a minority journalist, then you are weak and marginalized. And unfortunately, the law, the judiciary is not supporting you. That's why this culture of impunity is growing day by day, and the people are experiencing bottleneck for getting justice. They're crying for justice. So there is no alternative to start advocating or demanding for justice for this weak and marginalized group of journalists who are suffering in Bangladesh at every step. And we have to report these things to the international bodies, so they somehow convince the present regime to stop and protect the rights of journalists.
Yes, and
So,
there are also there's also something else that I need to point out briefly. There are also some newspapers, so-called newspapers in Bangladesh, which anti-Awami League, of course, they have been spreading slander against journalists who are known for their progressive work, for their integrity. We also need to undertake a campaign to inform people that these so-called newspapers and these so-called press spokesmen, they are contributing to the growth to the growth of this unhealthy trend in journalism in the country. So these things that also should be pointed out,
they're
because
basically inviting mobs.
mobs, yes, they're inviting. I mean, they're
Because
provoking
what
mobs
we
into action.
know, the core, it's if Yunus regime, the past 14 months of Yunus government is summarized by one word, that would be mob justice. That would be mob.
Well, there's nothing called mob justice. Mob
I
misrule.
mean,
Yeah,
mob lynching, mobs.
yeah, yeah.
Actually,
what
we should. I'd like to take this opportunity to put something on record. Syed Badrul Ahsan, he's a veteran columnist and a prolific writer, and many of us actually grew up writing his columns. Even last week, so Badrul Bhai, I have noticed, the press secretary of the chief advisor, Dr. Mohammed Yunus, he wrote a huge status targeting specifically you.
Yeah.
He wrote a status, like basically what he's doing. He's trying to create hatred. He's basically trying to intimidate a well-known columnist like Saud Badul Hassan.
And there's
And
also
lucky for him that he's currently, incidentally, he's living abroad.
and
So what would have happened if he were living in Bangladesh?
You know the answer. We all know the answer.
and
What would
to
have
this
happened.
point,
For our audience to know.
let
So
me also add here, as one of these so-called newspapers, recently there was a discussion, there was a seminar arranged in Delhi, and four of us Bangladeshis who were abroad, one in Australia, one in Canada, two in London, including myself, we were supposed to take part in the seminar. We did take part in the seminar, but before the seminar got underway in Delhi, and we made our contributions. We could make our contributions from abroad, wherever we were. This newspaper put out a banner headline with our pictures saying that four Bangladeshi journalists are taking part in an anti-Bangladesh conference in Delhi. Now, see, this is the level of their journalism. And I mean, these are the people who should be checked or who should be marked out. These are the newspapers, so-called newspapers, and these are the editors, these are the journalists, these are the press spokesmen whom we should remember, of whom we should make a list, so that in future such people do not ever again vitiate the course or the profession of journalism.
So basically, that is a
what
direct
worries
attack on
me
intellectual
more,
freedom.
Yes, yeah,
actually, our time is limited. What worries me most is that while we talk about advocacy, which is necessary, and help from our international friends, and also we expect the international organization defending free press and journalism to support Bangladeshi journalists. For some journalists working in Bangladesh, the situation, the time is not in their hand. They're beaten, they're bleeding. We see journalists are bleeding every day. In just past 2 months, 3 of them were killed. Even the law enforcement agencies are beating the journalists. It's not just intimidation. So their life is at risk right now. It's not just press freedom. It's about protecting the lives of the journalists who does such an amazing job for us. I mean, press freedom is the cornerstone of democracy. Over the past year, under Mohammed Yunus-led government, journalists in Bangladesh have faced unprecedented attacks. It's unprecedented. As it's Bangladesh Awami League program, and even from Bangladesh Awami League's page, we have no problem saying it, but that press freedom was always contested in Bangladesh because of our complex societies, many vested interests, but it was never this dangerous. It's not just about press freedom. It's about saving the lives of the journalists. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be meeting our audience next week again, same time, every Sunday, 10:30 Bangladesh time, 16:30 GMT. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.